One of my favorite anime of all time is a glorified smartphone game ad. And no, I am not joking. Takt Op is a mixed media project produced by Bandai Namco Arts and DNA. So far, the announced projects include a JRPG game produced by a studio named, well, Game Studio, and an anime produced by both studios Madhouse and MAPPA. And if the prospects of those two studios working together doesn't get you excited, well, let me tell you. We are talking about the studio that created Death Note, Hunter x Hunter, and No Game No Life, joining forces with the creators of Jujutsu Kaisen, Kakegurui, and the latter half of Attack on Titan. And while I will never forgive MAPPA for what they did to Mikasa's character design in the final season of Attack on Titan, you cannot deny that these are two absolute powerhouses within the anime industry. Yet out of all of the amazing manga and light novels that have yet to receive an adaptation, these two studios decided to link together for a 12-episode show that's sole purpose is to promote a mobile game. And you know what? I couldn't love it more. In the world of Takt Op Destiny, creatures known as D2s have infested the globe. This invasive alien species hates the sound of music. And no, not the 1965 classic movie musical, the literal sound of melodic noise. Because of this, the United States decides to issue a public decree that bans citizens from playing any music. However, there is one exception to this rule: the music arts. Humanity's last line of defense, these young women fight against D2s alongside their masters, known as conductors. While Takt Op Destiny cynics have complained that the musical aspects of the show felt tacked on, get what I did there, tact like tact, it never felt forced to me. Take one of the very first battles, for example. I'll admit, when I first heard the starting notes of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, I visibly cringed. It's such an overused classical piece that I assumed that whatever would come next would be incredibly corny. However, I was surprised to hear the piece play out for over 30 seconds before any action took place. It was a rare moment of serenity on the battlefield, as both sides prepared their first move. Finally, the piece was broken. However, rather than begin the fight with poise and grace, as the song would suggest, this breaking of peace came in the form of a jump scare, as Destiny ragdolled across the screen. Not at all the moment I expected from such a somber piece. Rather, this utilization of the Moonlight Sonata in a comedic, borderline satirical fashion was a refreshing change of pace. It's moments like this that make the incorporation of some of my favorite classical and jazz pieces feel special. When Cosette and Takt play Sing 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 on the piano together as the audience claps along, you can feel the happiness of the moment radiate through the screen. For many in the crowd, this was their first time hearing music in years. It felt as if they had already achieved their goal of being able to play music without restriction. So, to have this event interrupted by an explosion mere moments later made the scene that much more emotionally impactful. However, there is no better combination of classical music and amazing visuals than when Lenny and his music art titan fight to the tune of Mahler's First Symphony. This symphony is among Mahler's most famous works. In fact, it's so popular that I had the opportunity to play it during my freshman year of college. Maybe that makes me a bit biased, but hearing the piece played during an anime battle was nothing short of enthralling. Everything from the cinematography to the choreography of the fight was simply stunning. Each attack was timed perfectly with the crescendos of the pieces. As the music becomes increasingly intense, Titan's movements begin to show signs of desperation. She becomes completely unhinged as the fourth movement of the symphony begins. This movement, aptly named From Inferno to Paradise, perfectly complements the circumstances of the battle. As Mahler himself described, the last movement begins with a horrible outcry. Our hero is completely abandoned, engaged in a most dreadful battle with all the sorrow of this world. This scene alone makes me wonder how people could claim that music didn't play a vital part in the story. Without the blaring triumphant horns blasting during the fight's conclusion, it would not have packed nearly as hard of a punch. The use of this piece is even alluded to by the name of Lenny's music art, as Titan was the label that Mahler gave to his first symphony during its early performances. While most reviews of Takt Op Destiny claim that the best moments were found early in the series, I would argue that it is this moment that the show reaches its full potential. While not every fight utilizes music to this degree, I don't think that that's a negative. Composers such as John Williams and Hans Zimmer are worldwide superstars because they elevate the emotions of every film they score. However, unless you're a music nerd like me, you're not specifically listening to each intricate motif found within the music. You're focused on the characters, the dialogue, and the environments. Sure, when the movie's finished, you might go, huh, that music was pretty great. But most people's first reactions are to compliment the actors, the writing, the pacing, and the cinematography. So, to me, it's perfectly acceptable if the music takes a back seat during the moments when MAPPA and Madhouse deliver their insane visuals and choreography. And boy, are these visuals impressive. It's almost unanimously agreed upon that Takt Op Destiny shines most during the battle sequences. These battles have a perfect mix of the stylization of Jujutsu Kaisen and the comedy of, I don't know, the chip eating scene from Death Note.
I'll take a potato chip and eat it.
From the conductors waving their batons to the music arts firing their weapons, every movement is fluid. Honestly, I'm surprised by how well they sold the fights. When I first heard about this show, I didn't know how they could possibly combine classical music with intense battle sequences. However, I'm happy to say that it works perfectly. Sure, the idea of melody-hating aliens fighting music vessels is a bit goofy, but I mean, what do you expect? It's an anime. It aired the same season where a Japanese women's hockey team beat a Canadian team in one of their first games. They also then trade in their hockey jerseys for idol outfits and sing a song after every game, but that's beside the point. I know most of you know nothing about hockey, but trust me, that is far more unrealistic than aliens and music waifus. There is no shot that a women's hockey team from any other country can beat a Canadian team in one of their first games. Anyways, back to the peak fiction. Part of the beauty of every scene comes from the contrast between conductor and music art. The conductors stand tall with perfect posture, and many of them wear your typical concert maestro attire. Their movements are refined, with a sense of authority in each wave of their baton. Their commanding presence is evidence alone that most of them are classically trained in music. The music arts, on the other hand, shine with vivid colors. Their appearance makes it clear that they are the stars of the show. Their movements are calculated, but there's a sense of youth and freedom in each of their strikes. While their attacks are ultimately led by the conductors, the music arts are the ones that breathe life and emotion into every performance. It's this balance between conductor and music art that make every scene a thrill to watch. Now, if there's one aspect of the show that I'm not in love with, it's the ending. I won't be spoiling it, but it all just felt a little sudden. The anime spent most of the series building up to the conclusion only to just blow its load all at once, and not in a particularly spectacular fashion. Instead, the show ended in a way that left more questions than answers, and the after credits scene had me scratching my head. If anything, the Mahler showdown from episode 10 was a far more thrilling conclusion than the actual tail end of the story. In the end, the world was not as fleshed out as I had hoped. Rather than end the anime where they did, I think it would have been much cooler to have continued Takt and Destiny's story through a whole second season. However, since this anime was meant to serve as a prequel to the upcoming mobile game, I knew that this was an impossibility. If anything, I guess it shows that the anime did its job, because I'm very curious to see how the story continues through the JRPG. Realistically, Takt Op Destiny was a project MAPPA and Madhouse could have just phoned in. If they produced a typical subpar promotional anime and called it a day, no one would have complained. However, what we got instead was a beautiful 12-episode series. This show single-handedly got many people, myself included, interested in a project we would have never heard of otherwise. It's not often that I feel the need to rewatch an anime after watching it. I mean, I've had one guy asking me to watch Clannad for 300 days alone. But Takt Op Destiny is one I'll be sure to revisit. And well, that's Takt Op Destiny in a nutshell. If it sounds like I really had my script down this time, it's because this is my second time recording this. But anyways, if you want to hear about the most wholesome down bad anime, check out my video on My Dress Up Darling.